Welcome to our special edition of DW News Africa, looking at Africans and the demon drink. Now, the World Health Organization says only no alcohol is safe alcohol. So, how many Africans choose abstention? And for those who do decide to drink, how are they coping with their drug of choice? Do they even have a choice? We look at what alcohol is doing to the drinkers, their families, and the communities they live in. I'll take a trip to my mother's home, Kanyayo, which has one thing in overabundance: taverns. And what about the generation to come? Alcohol is a potent poison, especially for the developing fetus in the womb. DW News Africa looks to Western Cape, where drinking is blighting the lives of babies even before they're born. We speak to the mothers and their children. But there are alternatives to alcohol. Aromatic, flavorsome, and adult-friendly drinks that pack a punch on the palate without the pain in your pounding head the morning after, or that uneasy feeling about your liver in the long term. I'm Edith Kimani in Nairobi. Welcome to a special edition of DW News Africa on Africans and alcohol. Let's start with the good news. A recent report from the World Health Organization found that most Africans don't drink alcohol at all and never have done. Take a look. Abstention from alcohol can either be lifelong, here in green, or former drinkers, shown in yellow. You can see more than 70% of Africans have never drunk alcohol or are former drinkers who have stopped. How does that compare with the mainly Muslim Eastern Mediterranean? Abstention there is above 95%. And what about Europe? It's almost opposite to Africa. Nearly 2/3 of Europeans say they'd drink alcohol. But staying with that three-way comparison, let's look at how much alcohol each drinker actually consumes on average. And here you can see a very different picture. Despite having fewer drinkers, African drinkers consume about 33 grams per day. Just for the sake of comparison, that's about 2.5 glasses of wine every day. Whatever they're drinking, adults in those Muslim majority countries in Northern Africa and the Middle East consume about 16 grams of pure alcohol per day. European drinkers consume twice as much, about 32 grams every day. Let's drill down into the data from the continent. Darkest green is countries where people consume the most, the lightest, the least. Put another way, though relatively few African adults drink, those who do drink a lot. So, is there such a thing as safe drinking? The WHO says clearly there is no safe level for alcohol consumption. There is danger in every drop. So what's life like for those heavy drinkers? I decided to return to my mother's home village, where alcohol has become a scourge, and the once lively market has now an oversupply of just one thing: taverns. In a sleepy village in central Kenya, Karanja Mboro begins his day well into the afternoon. Despite our appointment to interview him made days beforehand, he's forgotten. Memory blackouts are regular for the 32-year-old. The father of two has been drinking since he was 15, and he hasn't stopped since.
These days, I mostly sit around doing nothing and drink out of desperation. I have nothing to look forward to in my life. When I wake up, I wish I could get money to go to the bar first thing in the morning and spend the whole day there drinking.
Mboro depends on odd jobs and his motorcycle business for income. On a good day, he can make nearly €3, but he spends €2 a day on alcohol. He tells me that he feels most like himself when he drinks. His habit has pushed his family away, leaving him alone and miserable.
My wife left me when I was still young. I blame myself. I have uncontrollable thoughts, and often when I drink, it's because I feel stressed. My wife left because we were always arguing, and also because of the alcohol, which meant I couldn't provide the life we deserved.
Mboro's friend tells me that many drinkers in the community share the same sense of helplessness.
Usually it's out of desperation and too much stress. Then there's the poverty here, which adds to the stress.
1 in every 8 Kenyans drinks, but the national body campaigning against alcohol abuse reports that 42% of those drinkers are addicted. And with so many young men struggling to stay sober in the village, the economy here has been strangled. This community square is also meant to double up as an economic hub for this village. I say meant to because my mother actually grew up in this village. In fact, the shop there in yellow, now converted to a bar, used to be my grandfather's shop. Next to it was another shop, now a bar. Next to it also used to be another shop, now a bar. In total, we've counted at least 6 pubs here. And there are women in this village who say that they're trying to change that. Jane Karanja is part of a help group which provides support for recovering alcoholics. The group is raising money to start businesses for former addicts like her sister Milka. Milka has been sober for less than a year following a 16-year battle with alcohol. It's a delicate process for the two sisters as they try to rebuild their relationship.
We can't keep reminding her of her drunk days. No, that's not good, and it would take her back. What is left now is for her to move forward. All we can do is give her the morale to keep going.
It's 5 p.m. and the most popular bar here is nearly full. For 98 cents, customers get 2 glasses of beer, which they spike with much stronger spirits. There's little to no regulation of alcohol here, and drinkers tell me they're not sure what's in the spirits. Boro's friends have arrived, but he's working on a nearby job. They've saved a spot for him because they are sure he will join them later. For more on this, we're now joined by Anne Mathu, who's a recovering alcoholic, 20 years uninterrupted, she tells me, and she is also a passionate campaigner against alcohol abuse and drug addiction here in Kenya. Thank you for joining us, Anne. So coming out of that report, the first question one might ask is, why do the people who choose to drink in Kenya drink to such an extent?
One is availability. Alcohol is readily available anywhere, anytime. And then accessibility, you can easily access it. So you see now the community has accepted that drinking is cool. So availability, accessibility, and now acceptability, that drinking is cool. People will always ask, how come you don't drink? And why don't you want to? You have to explain yourself as to why you don't drink. Yeah. So it's sort of a culture, it's accepted, and finding a person with a drinking problem, a drug problem, is not a big deal. It's not a big deal anymore.
And so what are some of the challenges that you face when it comes to regulation of production, manufacturing, and even consumption of alcohol?
So one, the manufacturers, we actually withdrew or cancelled the licenses of nearly all of them, and they had to be vetted afresh. So some of them have been closed down, have not been licensed, some have been licensed. Now the biggest challenge with these people, especially ones who are making second-generation alcoholic drinks, is that they have the main factory. Once the main factory is licensed, then they have a sub-factory somewhere in the village when they can mix all their concoctions, but the label is actually legal.
Drinking is obviously not new to Kenyans. In fact, culturally, we have very many names for different brews, and there's different ways of preparing them. So why is this phenomena of addiction new to this contemporary society?
We have too many addictive substances, some of them synthetic, and we no longer have the traditional brews that we used to have. Traditional brews were controlled, they were controlled by the elders of the clan, such that not anybody could wake up and drink. And then they had their way of disciplining those people who had a drinking problem. And actually, people feared even being seen by an elder when they are drunk. But then these days, it's like the culture has shifted. Our cultural values and morals have shifted, that people have started ignoring what used to be. We've been too much urbanized. So, and then this urbanization comes with new drinks. And these drinks are highly addictive. Highly, highly addictive.
You're now 20 years sober. Congratulations. As a recovering addict, can you tell me what some of the challenges were on your journey and some of the things that perhaps might pain you when you look at some of the people who are grappling with addiction?
Lack of support by family members when you are in addiction and when you're in recovery. And I had one of the ladies in the video say that we don't want to keep on reminding this woman where she's coming from. So some family members are quick to remind the person, no, you used to steal our phones. Not forgetting that this person needs support to remain sober. When he feels he's ready to talk about his past, he will talk about it. This thing, the first part of the body to be actually hijacked by alcohol is the brain. And then after some time, when the tolerance goes up, you keep on progressing from one stage to another, and then it gets to a time where the alcohol makes decisions for you. The withdrawals are so severe that you have to drink in the morning to stabilize. And actually, many people die from alcohol withdrawals. Yes.
A lot of stigma, a lot of work that still needs to be done. Anne Mathu, thank you so much for joining us. So we can already see how alcohol is destroying lives, and that's even clearer if you look at the number of deaths attributed to drink. Europe and Africa have the highest number of alcohol deaths in the world. Africa loses 52. Compared with the mainly Muslim countries where alcohol consumption is lower, the deaths caused by drink are far lower, just 9 per 100,000. In Europe, there are 53 deaths per 100,000 drinkers. But some lives are blighted by booze even before they begin. Alcohol is a potent poison, especially for the developing fetus in a mother's womb, a condition called fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, or FASD. South Africa's wine industry is centered on Western Cape, and it's no coincidence that the province has the highest rate of the alcohol disorder in the entire world. Diane Hawker reports from Cape Town.
Hellenic van Ross is expecting, but she already knows her new baby's life will be difficult. She has no regular work and her husband doesn't make much money. They already have 4 children to feed, and now a 5th is on the way.
I was hurting inside. I didn't want this baby. That made me feel like I should drink every day. If a friend used to come with a little bit of money, we would rush to buy boxed wine so that we could drink the whole day. It was very difficult to keep the baby.
She lives in a neighborhood with more than 20 unlicensed liquor outlets. People can be seen drinking from the early morning in these makeshift bars. Gangs and drugs are rampant. Areas like Roodeval in Worcester have high levels of unemployment, high levels of poverty and hopelessness. This cocktail of negative circumstances drive many people here to drink heavily. And some mothers simply don't know the impact this has on their unborn children. Van Ross only realized the long-term damage of her actions when she joined the FAS FACTS program. She is one of a dozen women currently being counseled against drinking while pregnant and breastfeeding.
We had to teach them that it's just for a short period of time. But in that short time, you are endangering your child's brain. They had to see the danger.
The Foundation for Alcohol-Related Research says there is a national problem.
Everywhere we've gone, we've seen a high prevalence of fetal alcohol spectrum disorder in the communities we work in. Unfortunately, it's strongly linked to low socioeconomic status. Poverty plays a massive role in all of the aspects of all of the characteristics of mothers of children with FASD. A lot of it can be traced back to socioeconomic status.
Tisha Lawrence was adopted and experienced alcohol withdrawal symptoms as a baby. As an adult, she's living with severe learning difficulties. Tisha can perform simple tasks like the barcoding work she does at a local factory. She's happy to have found a loving work environment.
Yeah. They're actually my family. Yes. Because they're very nice. I wouldn't say they're not because they're very nice and nice. Yeah.
Tisha's adoptive mother says the impacts are lifelong for children born with FASD.
Yes, she went to a special needs school and their main focus was on good manners. They said, you know, if you've got good manners, then you can get through life easier. She cannot read or write. She recognizes different symbols and she can pick out the brands that we always have. We always stick to just about the same brands.
Activists say education about the condition needs to be more widespread, targeting not only mothers, but the communities they live in too.
Let's now cross to Cape Town, South Africa, where we're joined by Aadielah Diedericks, who's the Secretary General of the Southern African Alcohol Policy Alliance. Thank you for joining us. Now, fetal alcohol syndrome, as we've just seen there, is a serious concern, and awareness about it is crucial. Are there any initiatives that your organization has implemented to protect vulnerable groups, particularly pregnant women?
Well, as SAPA, we've chosen to focus on the 3 best buyers of the World Health Organization, which is basically looking at reducing availability, increasing the price of alcohol, and restricting or banning alcohol marketing. In particular for us, marketing towards young people is of concern, and that includes young women. That we have on the continent and in South Africa, we have under 40% of young women that is consuming alcohol. And the alcohol industry sees this as a target market that they should be conquering. And therefore, the issue around looking at population-based interventions, where we look at banning alcohol marketing, becomes important, because evidence shows that children and young people, through exposure to marketing, they are vulnerable to start experimenting early and consume more alcohol in any one sitting, which leads to binge drinking, which is a major problem in South Africa.
Right. So, Aadielah, you're talking about the contemporary marketing trends, but South Africa has a very complex history with alcohol. How have you seen these trends evolve on consumption and production, and how have they affected South African society?
Well, I mean, as you said, that we do have a complex history, and that comes back from the colonizing era, where alcohol was used to grab land from the indigenous people. But particularly under the apartheid laws, alcohol was not allowed to be sold to Black people. And that led to an illicit marketing, retailing environment, which led to what we call today shebeens in South Africa. And we have currently over 250,000 illegal alcohol outlets where they are not licensed, they're not regulated, but it's also quite accepted because of these historical factors, where alcohol was seen as a way of also opposing apartheid, given that the apartheid government didn't want Black people to buy alcohol. So what we have now is we have about 250,000 unlicensed outlets that is accepted in communities where nobody talks about or reports about it. The law turns a bit of a blind eye to it. We don't enforce the laws. That lives amongst alcohol legal outlets. And that increases the availability of alcohol in residential areas, because these shebeens are found in areas where people live and not necessarily in commercial, central commercial areas.
What are some of the challenges that you're facing trying to implement some of the policies that you have in place?
Well, our challenge is that we have yet to have a government that completely buys into the idea that we should control alcohol. Our government currently still sees alcohol as a way of bringing people into the economy, which is problematic. And therefore, the way they regulate alcohol or how they enforce existing laws is not as it should be. Our challenge is also that the alcohol industry uses its economic muscle to lobby government around the notion that they are contributing to the economy, that they are creating jobs. The problem with that is that although they are contributing about 4% towards the GDP, the harm from alcohol that government has to fork money out for annually is between 10 and 12% of our GDP. So technically in South Africa, taxpayers subsidize the profits of the alcohol industry. But we don't have a government that understands that dynamic and still buys into the narrative that the alcohol industry is generating.
Well, thank you very much for explaining that rather complex issue in South Africa. Aadielah Diedericks, who is the Secretary General for the Southern African Alcohol Policy Alliance.
Thank you.
Let's shift gears now to Nigeria, where latest figures suggest Lagosians' love affair with champagne may be falling victim to the cost of living crisis. Prices have doubled and sales have gone flat. But the bubbly, like most alcohol, is seen as a status symbol. We asked DW Africa's Olisa Chukwumwa to take a night out in Nigeria's party town and find out what's their poison of choice.
Here at Lounge 107 on the Lekki-Ekpe Expressway, it's a typical night out. It's all about cocktails and a few shots of tequila, but mainly about cocktails.
I'm drinking cocktail. That's my favorite. It's an alcoholic. I love drinking cocktail.
Bartender Wilson Francis knows what most of the customers want: to switch off.
Most of them come for alcohol. They come for alcohol just to end the day. You just have to find something to kill the day. You can't be having a soft drink to kill the day.
I like to start very hard, very, very hard. I go with the strongest cocktails that the bar has to offer before I then go milder.
But not everyone is a fan of hard liquor. Some people do want to drink responsibly.
I prefer taking softs. Yeah, I do alcohol once in a while. That's for fun. You get so. Once I want to take myself out, I don't do alcohol. Alcohol is not really my thing.
When I go out on a Friday, I take something light. Like what I'm taking right now is mocktail, no alcohol.
Though alcohol is usually the preference in Nigeria, but some do go for some non-alcoholic cocktails, like this. It's called a Chapman. It originates in Lagos, and with its distinct red color, it's quite popular and seen as one of Nigeria's favorite drinks. Nice.
But even here in Lagos, some have a more radical approach: abstention on the rocks.
When it comes to alcohol, I don't. So I just prefer you give me water instead. My opinion might not be yours. It doesn't mean because I said I'm not taking alcohol, you must follow me. I'm only after my own health. Then you are also after your own health. You know what is good for you, and I know what is good for me.
Right, we're now joined by Ayanda Vabaza-Mvandaba from Drink Nil, which is a company specializing in alcohol-free drinks for adults. Ayanda, thank you for joining us. So the Sober Curious movement is definitely gaining traction globally. Is this what you're seeing in South Africa?
Thank you so much for having me today. Absolutely. In South Africa and globally as well, we're seeing the rise of the Sober Curious, and that is a whole host of reasons. It could be because people are wanting to be healthier, because people don't feel great after a night of drinking, and people are just wanting to be more mindful about what they put in their bodies.
Right. So Ayanda, you're talking about the health element here, but there's also a kind of stigma, one might say, associated with not drinking, particularly at an event where everybody else is. What is Drink Nil doing to sort of change this perception?
I think that's a great question. And when I really sat down and thought about this, as a Black woman in corporate, we're always punting inclusivity, right? In South Africa, we need to be inclusive, how we include women, how we include people of color. But a place where I feel inclusivity is lacking is when it comes to people that choose to not consume alcohol. And stigmatization, it goes across different aspects and elements. And so what we're doing is we're challenging people, corporates at their work functions and festivals, music festivals and jazz festivals. How are you being inclusive to your patrons that choose to not consume alcohol, right? So what we are punting and what we're pushing for is inclusivity, so that those that choose to not consume, whether for health reasons, religious reasons, or just because they don't like the taste, are also included in the fun. We're trying to move away from a society that is all about alcohol, and we're saying the party isn't over just because you choose to not consume alcohol. The party has just begun.
All right, so Ayanda, finally, do you see a continent of Africa or a country like South Africa being completely alcohol-free when it comes to parties and maybe some of these traditional rites of passage?
The short answer is no, I don't. But what I'm saying is that these things can coexist. Just before COVID in 2019, Cape Town had a sober festival, and that festival was only for people that choose to not consume alcohol. There was music, there were stalls, there were different types of non-alcoholic drinks. And that says to me that the market is there and it's completely understaffed and underserved and undervalued. So what we're saying is the two can coexist. So when we partnered with the Jazz Festival and we were the partner of choice for non-alcoholic beverages, that's exactly what we were saying, that patrons can still enjoy the Jazz Festival and have non-alcoholic beverages as well as alcoholic beverages. So I think the two can coexist.
Ayanda Vabaza from South Africa, Drink Nil, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that's all we prepared for you on this special edition of DW News Africa. I'm Edith Kimani from the entire team here in Nairobi and Berlin. We say thank you for watching.
Jaribu